And in the email we got, they said, oh, the police should let you down the street if you just tell them you're playing at the House of Blues. And I said, okay. So I asked the police. They were super shitty to me. And I called the House of Blues, and they said, the foundation room, and the girl said, well, then just go park somewhere and just bring your equipment. But it's downpouring. So we have all our equipment. It's a lot of heavy stuff. Like, it would take many, many trips, and we would have to park so far away. Like literally the parking lots were $50 a car because that's how it is for a Red Sox game like that. Literally, that's not even like my exaggerated story version. It was $50.
Right.
And so we had to park like blocks and blocks and blocks away. There's no way to unload all of our stuff from that far away. And I told her that, and she said, then cancel the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to 3 Gigs, the podcast that tells the stories of 3 shows that have had a profound effect on a performer's life and career. Their very first show, their best show, and their worst show. I'm your host Dominic Davey, and today my guest is Chuck Staten from Senior Discount.
When heroes become villains, brace a life of crime, with faith in your convictions, rots away over time. My body begins burning, both my lungs smoke-filled.
Senior Discount is a pop-punk band from New England that's been playing shows for over a decade. They've recently released a brand new album called The Best Revenge that came out on Paper and Plastic Records. That's actually owned by Vinny from Less Than Jake, the drummer. Chuck Staten is the guitarist and vocalist for the band, and in fact, when the band produced a comedy documentary about itself, it won Best Comedy at the Indie Gathering Film Festival, and that came to the attention of the people behind Comic Book Men. And so now he does video work for one of their podcasts, Tell 'em Steve Dave. He also hosts his own comedic podcast, the Chuck and Brad Podcast, that is a great show. I highly recommend it. And he recently had Tsunami Bomb on the show, so of course I had to have him on mine. This was recorded at our concert that we played together just outside of Boston on May 17th at the Once Ballroom in Somerville, Massachusetts. This is actually in the van itself on the street outside the club. I was on tour, so this explains my gravelly voice. I've been yelling for the last few nights. And one of the reasons it sounds so good is because we're using Chuck's equipment, which is way better than mine. So thanks, Chuck. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the show. Chuck has some great stories. He's really funny. And of course, we started, as always, with his very first show ever.
Okay, so let me think. Basically, the show... All right, the first real band show we had, we were a 3-piece. Senior Discount was a 3-piece at the time. Mm-hmm. So it was myself as the guitarist, our drummer, and our bassist. And there was a band called Monty's Fan Club who eventually became Monty R.I.
Okay.
And they were setting up shows. They were really helping out the scene. They were like the band that made it from Providence. They were on Island Def Jam, and they were on Warped Tour, and they toured with Sum 41 and Yellow Card, and they were the band that everyone looked up to at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really cool, and they got us a show, but it was, it was at like a rented out VFW hall, that kind of show. And they had set up the PA and stuff, and we had all of our, beginner equipment. And I was stupid enough to pick out a guitar that had locking tremolos on it. And I just picked it out because it was cool. So it locks, you tune it at the top like a traditional guitar.
Right.
Then you get to retune it at the bottom for like super specific tuning, and then it locks. And I wasn't good at tuning it. So we played this first show, and it was like nobody was there. There was probably like a few, like not a crazy amount of bands, maybe 5, like too many bands, but not a crazy amount. Some of the bands I knew of, like there was a ska band called Jumps the Shark that I really liked that played the show. It was just local. And so no one was there, but we were still psyched. We were super psyched to be playing the show. And we start, and it's the first strum, I broke a string.
Oh, that's the worst.
And so at this point, I've never really had any stage experience, and this is definitely the first time that I've broken a string in front of people, and I have this guitar with this locking tremolo. So I can't even really change my string, and I'm the only guitarist in the band. So it's not even like, oh, the other guitarist is just going to play the rhythm parts and I'm going to fix it.
It's not even fair. That's not fair.
It was seriously like one of the most awkward moments of my life. I had no stage experience, so I wasn't used to banter or whatever. And the bassist and the drummer, Christian is my drummer currently still, and Kevin was the bassist at the time, continued the song. And we had there was a very small amount of people in the crowd. I'm talking under 15. And one of our friends was there at the time. His name was Souza. And I went over to him and I kind of pretended to dance with him like I was going to be part of the crowd. I had no idea what to do. And it was funny because I didn't really know the rest of the band, so I didn't know to ask from the stage, because now I would just kind of run to whoever I know is a guitarist and ask to borrow their guitar real quick and jump back on stage.
Right.
But back then I didn't really have that confidence or knowledge that that's okay. So I did ask the lead singer of Monty R.I., who took a minute to find his guitar, and I felt so bad because his guitar was a custom guitar, and his strap was locked, it was duct taped onto his guitar a certain way. And I was no, I'm like, it feels a little bit weird, it's a little bit too small, and so he had to take off the duct tape from the guitar. And I felt like such a fucking dick in front of this band that I had really looked up to.
Right.
And that was pretty bad. And I remember afterwards still feeling like it was cool that we did it. So it was almost like a nightmare moment in the moment, and then it was fine. It was it washed away immediately, and I was happy to talk to their bands and, find some friends that are similar, and talk to the guys from Jumps the Shark who had songs I like, and talk to the guys from Monty R.I. But that was our first show, and I'm sure we played garbage. I probably only did downstrokes at the time because I was new at guitar. We came up with the idea of having a band before we ever played instruments. We're let's be a band. Then we spent, a year practicing a good amount. We practiced often, but still, by the time we played our first show, not great still. So not
rough.
Typical for a show experience, I'd say. You know what I mean?
I mean, the first shows are always really awkward and difficult.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, it's a little bit of a training ground anyway, right?
Right. But I'm glad you still kept at it.
Yeah, of course. Oh yeah. No, it was still fun to us. We walked away and it was still fun. And plus, situations like that, you look at a problem like that as avoidable in the future.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's this is something we can solve. It's not a situation we're stuck with.
Right. No, it was very clear what caused the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So there were solutions to it.
Okay, that's good. That's a great story. I mean, it's impressive that you got through it and were okay, I still had fun, even though everything went wrong.
Right.
But that's awesome. Okay, so you got through that.
Yeah.
Clearly kept on going.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be one of the shows that would be one of the best shows? What would be that?
See, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about the idea of our best show, and one show that I'm thinking about was this is a weird story. So around Rhode Island, there's a radio station called WBRU, and they were the largest independent radio station in North America for a while. They actually went off the air last year and became all digital, and they've had varying degrees of success since then. But for a long time, they were a big alternative station to the people that grew up kind of around my age group and the people that were into alternative music at all, punk rock, stuff like that, everything.
Okay.
And they had a thing called the Rock Hunt, and we were in the Rock Hunt, and the Rock Hunt was not a good show. Our bassist Kevin actually had quit the band on stage the night before.
Oh.
And it was this night before was a great show. We headlined and we drew 500 people to this show, the Living Room in Providence. That was our home venue at the time. It was probably the peak of our time at the Living Room, and he quit on stage during the last song.
Wow.
And we had 2 shows scheduled in the next 24 hours. We had a matinee show in Boston, and then we had to be in the BRU Rock Hunt that night. But we came back, and he, of course, he was I'm quitting the band, but I'll do these 2 shows. So we weren't talking, but we were playing the shows together. And we played the show, and we played probably at a C+ level, I'd say, in terms of what we're capable of at the time. But one of the people that was a judge was the DJ Girl Talk, who was a mashup DJ.
Yeah.
And he really liked us.
Yeah, okay.
And
that's kind of random, really?
Right? Yeah. This very random. Because he's not even from around here at all. He's from, I think, Philadelphia. I don't know. And maybe. But he liked us. We got a text at 2 a.m. that night from one of the main bookers in the area. And he's like, "You've been added to the Girl Talk show at Toad's Place, and it's already sold out in Connecticut coming up." And we were like, "Oh, that's sick." Here's the thing. It's funny that I'm taking so long to get to the show, but my guitarist at the time, this is terrible, his close friend who lived in Florida, her roommate had committed suicide recently. and her dad had bought Tom a plane ticket to go stay with her and like cheer her up, and it was at the same time as the show. So we had to say we cannot take the show, you know, because it's a really serious thing. But we stayed in touch with Girl Talk. His name is Greg, and he was coming to the House of Blues in Boston, which is a huge venue. It holds 3,500 people.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing 2 nights there. Night 1, the opener was Sean Kingston, and we wrote him. And night 2, the opener was our band Senior Discount. And it was already sold out, 3,500 people, sold out completely. So we were like, you know, this is like real deal shit, you know what I mean? And we were psyched, and I think I think of that as the height of what we've accomplished, because you know, you just saw us play tonight, and like kind of like being funny and being likable is kind of a big part of what we do. We really want the energy to be a specific way for our shows.
Yeah.
And
you could tell, no, you guys have an incredible stage presence, and your timing is impeccable as far as like how quickly you guys bounce off of each other.
I appreciate that. It's such an important part of kind of what we bring to the table, I think, you know. Yeah, thank you. But so we played the show, and I feel like we were very funny. We played really well. Like, you know, and it was the House of Blues, and it was sold out, and so the crowd was just crazy. Like, but there's pictures of us playing there, and it's just crazy. Awesome. And we played really well. You know, we got there early.
When was this? When did this happen?
It was a while ago now, unfortunately. we regularly play. We have regularly played in Providence at a venue called Lupo's with lots and lots of people there. You know, we played at Lupo's, sold out many times, but Lupo's caps out at 2,000 people. And the House of Blues caps out at 3,500. So it just seemed like a big jump because there's 3 floors, you know, it's huge.
Right.
But we got there early, like the House of Blues cooked for us, and they made us this salmon. I ate too much salmon, but that's okay. And we had these crazy, crazy green rooms.
I know what you mean though. Like, so when you get offered food, you're like, okay, I gotta eat everything I can.
And it was so good. And we were still fucking with each other. We're like, you know, there was like mashed potatoes, and then there was salad dressing that was brown, and then there was salad. And I was like to Christian, my drummer, I was like, I think that's gravy. And he's like, oh yeah. And he takes mashed potatoes and he puts the salad dressing all over his mashed potatoes. But I think of that kind of.
That's really funny.
I think of that as kind of like one of, you know,
evil.
One of the it is evil. One of our best shows. And I think we did connect to the crowd. We talked to a lot of people afterwards and really went out there and we really try to like push it and talk to people and kind of really make them remember us and personally talk to them.
You can feel it though when you grab
I think
them.
so.
When you know you have them. There's that moment of like,
I think so, yeah.
We reached them, we got them.
I think so. So I think that was probably the top. And this is kind of like a B-side to this is that we also that same week we had a headlining show in Rhode Island, back where we're from in Providence, at Club Hell, and we had sold out the club. So we basically did like, you know, a similar set because when we opened for Girl Talk, it was only 2 acts, so we played for 45 minutes. So we played, you know, a little bit more in our home show at Club Hell, and that was way more people who love us already, and people who know the songs, and people who were there to see us, as opposed to Girl Talk, which was the opening for Girl Talk, which was all new people. But we kind of got the best of both worlds that week because we played our own home show in Providence with other people that love us, and got to hear everyone screaming our songs back at us, as well as got to get to this new level of the amount of people we're playing in front of, and be able to kind of command that room.
And it still works.
Successfully, yeah, exactly. So I'd say that week, those 2 shows together, which took place at the same time, you know, that same week, was kind of the height of where we realized we were at a level, where we realized we were at that level, where it's almost like you kind of hope you get to a certain level at some point in terms of control and ability. And I think that cemented us there. But there's other ones too that I could have chosen that are a little bit more recent. But I think that is really where it felt like the sun was shining on us. You know what I mean?
It's really interesting that you made an impression on him.
Yeah, exactly.
So he wanted to have you on the show, and
exactly.
And then it sounds like you pulled the crowd. Like I said, you can always tell when you got them.
I think so, and it's crazy too because we made an impression on him, and we were like not psyched, you know. And it was 24 hours after the bassist had quit, and we had played a show in Boston earlier that day. Yeah, it was just nuts. But yeah, so I feel like that's the week where I felt the most like just positivity about stuff we did. You know. Yeah, it was cool.
That's awesome. That's a great story. I mean, I understand why you'd pick that as one of the best. It's kind of like a multi-part best because one show led to another. It was just really cool.
Yeah, and it's funny too because we really we try to do just like specific things that bring a little bit of our personality to the stage more. And at our home show, we recorded a bluegrass version of one of our most thrashy song, and we went off stage to do the encore. We went out in the street. We all changed into these like hillbilly outfits, and we came back on stage and we did our bluegrass version of that song, and then we did a bluegrass version of Paper Planes by MIA, and the crowd like lost their shit, and it was just a great week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really,
so comedy's
really
really important part of the band's identity. I mean, do you feel like you might be bordering on being a comedic band, or do you feel like that's just a manifestation of your guys' presence?
You know, it's. I mean, I do stand up comedy too.
So there kind of might be and just sort of naturally appeals to
yes. And we do, I do live comedy with my buddy Brad, who does the podcast with me, the Chuck and Brad podcast. And a lot of that stuff is not written. And it's almost like you have this extra pressure to come up with it, being funny in the moment. And like, that's what you want on stage. So it's almost like that's turned on inside me no matter what. So if there's like a second where I have to tune my guitar, or we have to, have a second so Christian can breathe, my drummer, between songs, I know that I'm going to say something funny because that's what feels like the right thing to do.
Right.
Just instinctually. I don't think we're going to ever write like funny songs necessarily, but I think we're always going to be a funny band. Blink-182 and NoFX really were huge influences on kind of what we believed in creating the atmosphere of a live show.
Right.
And those bands are both so funny and so full of personality that I think it's just... Yeah, it's really important to us.
Yeah, they don't hold back, those bands.
Yeah, I know.
It's real. Like, it was interesting to like tour with no effects and find out how real some of those play arguments are. Like how actually like annoyed they actually are with each other when
did you read the No Effects book?
I'm in the middle of it.
What do you think? It's fucking awesome.
It's awesome.
It's
a really
unbelievable.
book.
But yeah, it's dark. It's very dark, and it's really real. But I really respect that. I watched Backstage Passport, the TV show they did that was like originally a documentary that was going to be just a movie, but it was so big there's a TV show. And Fat Mike was a dick in it a lot. And then in the book, he admits he's a dick. And then they came out with the fucking, they came out with an album after that. And there's a song that he wrote called "I Don't Like Me Anymore," and it's a reaction to him seeing himself and all these things. You know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was like, oh, it's so real. It's so cool to turn that into art, I guess. But yeah, I believe that. I believe that those fights were real.
That's really funny. Yeah. No, they really are, and like they're not kidding. And I think like Blink-182 can't help themselves, just like the Vandals.
Yeah, right.
They're just naturally sarcastic and just biting and just go right to it.
Yeah.
But
I always thought like an energetic like punk rock show or pop punk show or ska show, whatever it is, that goes along with so much with fun. And fun is so close to funny. It's like, it's just those two things live together. Right, It's almost like it's part of the territory, I feel like. If you're at a punk rock show, I think it's great to have a band with personality on stage. It's always you could be like a B- band, and if you have an A+ personality, I think people like you.
Right.
If you're an A+ band with a B- personality, though, you might get some thumbs downs. You know what I mean? Thumbs downs. I guess I'm trying to think if that's the plural of thumbs down. 2 thumbs down. No, I guess it's not. I guess it's just thumbs down. Oh,
thumbs down.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
too bad.
It's the royal thumbs
We'll stick
down.
with thumbs down. Yeah. It's just capitalized.
All right. That's great.
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
Yeah.
So considering that is your best show and the story of it, and with a little extra on top.
Yeah.
What would be one of the worst shows you've ever had to play?
So...
Like, what's a moment where it's just, we were just
I have
like,
a really
oh, dear
offensive
God.
one. Are you cool with a really offensive one?
It's your story,
Okay,
man.
all right.
Represent the stories.
So, we've both been in bands a long time.
Yes.
Sometimes you take shows because they're good for your band. Sometimes you take shows because they're good for exposure. And sometimes you take shows because you need to get paid and it's a good paying show.
Right.
Right? So you say, oh, this place booked us. It's not really appropriate for what we do, but they're going to pay us more money than this other show that was a much more appropriate show. So you take the show once in a while.
Right.
So we took this show at a sports bar that was going to pay us a good amount of money.
Right.
And, we knew it was probably not going to be a great situation. But usually we can win over a crowd with how funny we are. Usually that's what happens.
That's how you do.
I think it makes sense. And so we started playing. One of the people that works in this sports bar, first of all, no one's paying attention. Everyone's just sitting down and eating dinner, and they're all, they're all like.
I'm sorry to laugh. I've been there.
Oh, dude, and they're like shocked. Basically, everyone's over the age of 50. They're all shocked that we're playing, and we're playing, and one of the people that works there comes up and he goes, "Turn down the plates. Turn down the plates." And we're like, He goes, "Turn down the plates." We're like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "The plates." And he's pointing to Christian. He's talking about Christian, my drummer's cymbals. Oh my God. And he's calling them plates, and he thinks that there's a volume knob for them. We're not, the drums weren't mic'd. And I was like, "We can't. Christian, can you play softer?" And we tried to be funny and friends, but we just kept getting dirty looks. Everyone hated us. I was so annoyed. There was so much resistance. No one was down. And I don't know if you've dealt with this. Have you ever dealt with a day where you're like, we're going to play this show. No one wants us here. No one likes us here. Fuck them. And you become like rebellious on stage.
Totally been there. So
we have a song that we often close with called Ataxia. And the chorus is, it's our thrashiest song, and the chorus is like, I swear I'll kill you, I swear I'll fucking kill you. And it's our most like raw punk rock song. We do a lot of poppy stuff. This is our most raw punk rock song. And I knew it was gonna go over terrible. Because even our fun stuff was going over terrible.
Okay.
So we start playing it.
Again, you can always tell when you have an audience or you do not.
And everyone's looking at us, and they have this disgust in our face. And I'm like, these people are looking down on me. And I just went to this place where I was so mad and like offended that they were offended. This is just the truth. We got to the breakdown where I don't have to play anything on guitar. And because I really want to say, fuck you think you're offended, I just started jacking off like in my pants, like to shock them on purpose during the breakdown of this song because they were they were acting so offended, and we're such pieces of shit for playing this music, and this is so disgusting to them. And I was like, you want to fucking see disgusting? Wow. And so I pantomimed masturbation out of anger during our song, and we hightailed it after that. After we got paid, we hightailed it.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I feel
Did people react immediately to what you were doing?
Oh, people were fucking disgusted. Like, I think if it was any earlier in the set, we would have been asked to stop playing, but it was right at the end of our last song.
So
You
were able to get away with it.
Yeah, but that was that was so
I can't imagine why that wouldn't work. I can't imagine why this would be the worst story. Like, wow.
But I will say, I'm sure you probably said the same thing where we're like, we're going to go into the show, we're getting paid for it, there's not going to be anyone there, let's just think of it as a practice that's live in front of people, and let's just make the best of it. Yeah. And that's what our attitude was. And then people acted like we were like the devil for playing fast, loud music, and I was just like, oh, you're going to get the devil.
That's amazing.
I'm sorry, that's such a terrible story. I don't know if that's actually like the worst, because it was really, I was mad, but we were all, the band is a team, we still felt like we were unified. We played this past Tuesday at the House of Blues in Boston in the Foundation Room. I was telling you about this earlier.
Yeah.
And
this one.
they were see, this to me, this one was way worse because it was so much more. The difficulty level of actually playing the show was 100 times higher than that show. That show we had to deal with disgusted people, but we just loaded in, played our show, and left. The one we played this past Tuesday, we got hired to play the Foundation Room as a pre-show party for the Sum 41 Does This Look Infected anniversary tour. Mm-hmm. And we showed up, when load-in was, which was 5 p.m. And the street that House of Blues in Boston on is across from Fenway Park where the Red Sox play.
Right.
And there was a Red Sox game.
So it shut down.
So the street was shut down.
Oh my God.
And it was downpouring. And in the email we got, they said, oh, the police should let you down the street if you just tell them you're playing at the House of Blues. And I said, okay. So I asked the police. They were super shitty to me. And I called the House of Blues, and they said, the Foundation Room, and the girl said, well, then just go park somewhere and just bring your equipment. But it's downpouring. So we have all our equipment. It's a lot of heavy stuff, like, it would take many, many trips, and we would have to park so far away. Like literally the parking lots were $50 a car because that's how it is for a Red Sox game like that. Literally, that's not even like my exaggerated story version. It was $50.
Right.
And so we had to park like blocks and blocks and blocks away. There's no way to unload all of our stuff from that far away. And I told her that, and she said, then cancel the show.
Oh, damn.
And
they just really didn't care.
Yeah, and I want to continue to work with them so I'm not going to comment on it. I'll just tell you the facts. They did say that, and so we said, "What the fuck do we do now?" So we went to the bottom of the street, where where Lansdowne meets like Ipswich, where there's still a barricade, and
Right.
we went up the wrong way on the street because you can go up like 150 feet, 200 feet. Stopped our cars, downpouring. I'm like, the door is still really far away, but let's just fucking do this. So we all got ready. My guitarist Matt Kelly took his shoes off because he's like, I don't want to get my shoes so wet, and we were like in inches of water. And we just started running our equipment in piece by piece through the downpour. We get to
I understand, which is why I'm shaking my head. And people can't see me shake my head, but I'm totally shaking my head.
And we get to the door, and they go, hey, you have to stop. We have to look through every bag you have, every guitar case, every drum case.
Oh, are you serious?
I was like, oh my God. So we were said, okay, they look through every individual thing. We start bringing it upstairs. It's not really a perfect room for like a concert, like a show like that with a loud band, but we made the best of it. The sound guy was really nice. We had 3 different cars. They all had to do the same thing with that running in the downpour. Then we had to go all find parking. I think one of us did pay $50 to park. One of us got a $50 parking ticket. But we went up, we played our set. We were half an hour late because it took so long to circle the street and get to everywhere.
Just to get settled.
And we played our show. Then they go to pay us at the end of the night, and they basically gave us a check for 25% less than we agreed on too.
Oh, no.
And I was like, hey, this isn't how much we're supposed to make. It was already like this awful situation. We played to nobody again, and the girl's like, oh yeah, I don't write the checks. And she just walked away. I went back, I'm like, but you're the one that's paying me. And so I stood my ground. I made her take back the check. I'm like, let's just talk about this another time.
Right.
And I think they're gonna make good on it. But man, like when we got the call and they just said, then cancel, I was like, oh,
so rough.
and the rest of the band too was pretty defeated because it was raining. We were in traffic for so long at that point in time, and they were like, maybe we should cancel. I mean, she even suggested it, and she's the people running the venue. I'm like, no, we're not going to cancel. We're here, and so we did it. That was a pretty rough one though. I came close to saying, we're going to cancel this show because of difficulty, which has never really happened to me before.
Right,
so,
you're a soldier. You'll go for it.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, man, that's what you got to do.
You've been listening to Chuck Staten from the band Senior Discount. If you're interested in finding out more about Senior Discount, check them out at seniordiscountmusic.com. If you'd like to hear about his podcast, the Chuck and Brad Podcast, you can hear it on your favorite podcast platform, and you can follow them on their Facebook page, facebook.com/Chuck and Brad Podcast. Both the band and podcast are pretty fun. I recommend them both highly. If you want to know more about this show, 3 Gigs, feel free to check out the website at 3gigspodcast.com to find extras and live footage of all of our guests, including Senior Discount. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram just by searching 3 Gigs Podcast, and you can let us know what you think of the show and who you'd like to see as a guest in the future. I'm listening. If you're enjoying this show, please take a moment to review and rate the show on the 3 Gigs Podcast page over on iTunes. I know, iTunes, but it is a huge help in getting the word out, and I really appreciate it. Our theme music for this episode is Afterlife, off of The Best Revenge, the brand new album by Senior Discount, now available on Paper and Plastic Records. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Dominic Davey, and this has been 3 Gigs Podcast. We'll see you next time.
A match was made.